Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Simeon Papailias. He is a realtor. He's an expert in pre-construction condos. He's very involved in the real estate business in the Greater Toronto area. And I think that, what's going on with mortgage interest rates, with pre-construction condos, with the real estate market is something that all of us are chatting about a lot. And so I thought it would be really helpful to have Simeon join us. I've had the honor of chatting with him a couple times before, and he's someone that I really respect. And so it's a pleasure to have him back. A week ago, Simeon, you posted that 50% of Canadians are seriously considering leaving urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver due to the skyrocketing cost of living. And you say that it was disheartening to witness that these iconic cities are going to end up having a real problem with a significant opportunity, though, for smaller rural markets to thrive. And you said investing in those emerging markets might be a great financial opportunity, but also a quality of life opportunity. So I thought that was interesting that you see this big problem for major urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver, but also an opportunity that you're kind of excited about from an investment standpoint in smaller centers. Tell us a little bit about that, if you could.
First and foremost, thank you for having me, Brian. I appreciate the opportunity to share our insight that we see every day from the ground with your audience. Something we appreciate, and hopefully it resonates with many. We are in the most troubled market I've seen in my nearly 2 decades. I've been in the business for 18 years, and I have seen ups, I have seen downs, and I have seen sideways. This is very, very different. It's a much deeper rooted and far more complex situation than Canada has ever dealt with before. There is similarities to previous situations where we can use those historic moments for guidance, but to bring back the cliche word of the last 4 years, unprecedented, would be the understatement of all time. So we've never in our history had 14 interest rate hikes, let alone in a less than 2-year period. We finally saw that bottom out last month, in June, where we saw the first decrease in 4 years by 25 basis points, which kind of signaled to the entire country that the end is behind us, meaning the bottom was found. But that's not nearly enough to change the course that we're on. The momentum of economic downturn and negativity is here. And it's going to be here for a little while longer, in my opinion, anywhere between 12 and 18 months before we see real change. And we'll get into some of those things. But speaking to the numbers that you mentioned, Angus Reid, which is kind of the stat that I follow the most, the rest are a little bit more hyped up, a little bit more hyped down. But Angus Reid was pretty thorough in their polling. And the average across the country, 30%. 3 out of 10 people are saying, I'm going home and I'm thinking about what my next move is. Where should I live? Costs are out of control. In Toronto and Vancouver, over 4 in 10 are considering the same thing. And I'll definitely supply you with the source documents for this data. So if anybody in your audience wants to take a look at the actual data, they can. But those numbers, I'm not going to say it's disheartening for the people. People will always do what they need to do. It's the fact that people are going backwards. You've put in 5, 10, 15 years of your life into your home, into your work, into your stability. And then the government did what it did over COVID, and now everybody has to pay for it with the same paintbrush. And not everybody's the same. Not everybody can weather these storms like others can. So this one-size-fits-all policymaking by our current government has made Canada a very strange place to live right now, for me to save the rhetoric for maybe a different time. But too many mistakes have been made, and we've put.
So you're thinking this is a national problem, not a local, provincial, or municipal problem?
Well, it's further exasperated by more issues in these urban centers where you have 8 million people on top of each other, for sure. But it is a national problem because the person in Regina, Saskatchewan, is being treated the same way as somebody in Toronto. And that's not viable. It's not fair. Not that fairness always has something to do with it, but it's not the way to fix problems. You can't punish an entire country for the mistakes you made in urban centers.
Now, from an urban standpoint, I spoke with Ron Butler of Butler Mortgages last week, who I think you know,
Yes.
and he called it a condo crisis, a condo crash, in fact. And we talked a little bit about the condo business, and he said there were something like 28 months of pre-construction condo inventory on the marketplace that had been completed, and was only going to get worse as more condos were completed in 2024. But he said it hadn't yet gone into the single family market pricing yet. Listings were up. On the time on the market was being extended, but pricing had not declined as of yet. Tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, so there's a few complexities with that, and Ron is a very respected opinion in the finance and mortgage world. So I actually follow him, and I like a lot of his content. In this case, I'm not disagreeing with anything. What I'm rather going to do is I'm going to expose a different side to this thing so people can actually understand why and what is happening. I'm in the middle of putting together a thought thesis to explain a little bit of what lies in the next 5 years. And I'll give you the basics of that, because I believe the people who hear this are going to understand what's happening in their neighborhood and down the street. After the light crash of 2017, the markets were white hot. They introduced the Ontario Fair Housing Plan. There was a period of time of 6 to 8 months where the real estate market halted, and then it restarted. And then by the time it found its footing, 2019, 2020, we were back to a healthy trajectory. In 2020, make the long story very short, we go into the pandemic and we go into an unprecedented 0% interest rate situation for mortgages in order to keep the economy going. People borrowed their brains out. People were extremely, and I'm not going to say reckless, but they got that FOMO, that consumer momentum that's the most dangerous on the planet. What's happening in stocks right now? What happened in crypto a few years back? What's happening in stocks right now where they're rallying, and you have people who should never be touching their investments going into stocks they should never. This is what was happening in real estate. I remember going to work and people saying, hey, can you get me a unit here, a unit there, a unit here? And I was like, have you talked to a mortgage broker? And they're like, no. It's like, can you qualify? Like, what do you do for a living? I'm a civil servant. How much money do you make? 80,000. Your partner, 60,000. You own a home? Yes, we do. We just bought a home for 1.4 million. I said, okay. What makes you think you can expand into an investment property based on what you just have done? Oh, the payment's only $2,600. I said, but have you tested? Have you had the conversation? They said no. So I have a practice for a very long time, and we've made our practice based on this type of intake and due diligence. But I can assure you that the industry as a whole does not do that. If somebody says, I want to buy something, the typical response is, sure, sign here. And that's what happened. So you have all these people, not all these people, we're still talking about the fringes of the market, but you have many hundreds, maybe thousands of people. In the overall picture, it's not enough to cause a catastrophe in the market. But to these people, it's very real, and they're getting hurt in real time. So what they did in 2021 is they signed up and bought a condominium, for example, or a townhouse, doesn't matter. The interest rates changed as of February 2022, and up to last month, they were only going up to a point where occupancies, in Ontario, we have what's called occupancy, and then we have closing. The occupancy closing is a mandatory period in the condominium world where the developer is substantially complete and forces the consumer, the end user or investor, to take possession of their unit. During this time, they have to pay sort of a rent. And that rent is consisting of mortgage interest rate on the remaining portion of their purchase price. If they put 20% down, it would be an interest-only portion of the balance of what's owing, an estimated maintenance fee, and an estimated property tax, based all on information that you had up ahead. The difference between closing in 2021 and closing in 2024 is that occupancy rate was calculated once at about 1%, 1.5%. It is now at 7.9%. To put that into perspective, a $500,000 outstanding balance, which is 80% of a $600,000 condo, give or take, that monthly payment is around $4,500. Right. The rents, which have skyrocketed in the last 2 years as a result of all this, they went up by 40% from 2,000 to 2,500. Imagine being a tenant and paying 2,500, but to the owner, they're still 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 underwater, month after month. In those 30 days, passed like this. So we're talking about hundreds of people have been put in this precarious situation, and not everybody has the ability or the luxury to deal with it. So now you have all those people who would never sell. These are all people who bought these properties to hold as an investment, trying all at the same time to dump their units because they can't afford to keep them. Meanwhile, we have record delivery to the market that we typically don't have. So you have the most deliveries to the marketplace, which is welcome news for affordability. You have all the investors who cannot close and or who cannot carry. And of course, on top of that, the regular resale market. And that's how you end up in a situation where you have 20,000 units available in downtown Toronto, which typically you would have 5,000.
20,000 units in downtown Toronto versus a typical of 5.
Yeah.
And that's what's leading to this this crash.
So that's where we're at. And the only reason I'm not going to say it's a crash, because it smells like a crash, it quacks like a crash. The thing is, the demand is not only there is thousands waiting. And they're waiting because we do, in fact, have a housing crisis. That has not been solved. The fundamentals of the lack of supply in Ontario has not gone away. It may look this way, but that's deceitful. What's further going to exacerbate this problem is the fact that because of no sales, because of the buyer's ability, not having an ability to buy at these interest rates to qualify, you have all the developers stopping to launch and build because who's going to buy? So now we have the absolute most record lowest sales of all time in this market, 5,000 at the end of May, as opposed to 20,000 if it was a regular year. So we're 75% down in new construction sales, which means developers can't launch their product. So if you just follow the straight line, in 2.5 to 3.5 years from now, when this inventory is absorbed, there's going to be nothing on the market. And that whole goal of building 1 million homes in Canada or 150,000 homes around the GTA in the next 5 or 10 years is going to be a zero.
No, the goal is still going to be there, if not greater, but the accomplishment's going to be zero.
Correct. So you're going to go from a market that's in a glut, a market of absolute disaster, which we're in right now, this second, into a market that's going to be screeching red hot, white hot, because you won't be able to have anywhere to buy. So prices are going to double or whatever they're going to do in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
So are you recommending people buy up as many of these pre-construction condos that are coming on the market today as they possibly can, because you're going to have this massive acceleration in a couple of years?
I will say exactly what I have said for 18 years. Real estate investment is not a game. I do not tell anybody to buy anything without completely understanding where they stand. This is a tremendous opportunity to buy real estate for many. For those who have the dry powder, meaning the cash, to not require bank financing, they will never see prices and or terms that we have right now. But for any regular end user, any human being that works for a living, has put aside their after-tax dollars to put them at risk, unfortunately, although it's against the way I make my living, I'm going to have to say nobody knows what's going to happen ahead. It's extremely volatile. Sit back, wait for a little bit further stability. Even if you have to pay a little bit more, you need to see 2 or 3 decreases before you make your move, if you're thinking of real estate investment.
So that's the condo market. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back and ask Simeon if it's gone beyond the condo market. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes, we're talking about the real estate business, primarily in the Greater Toronto Area right now. Stay with us. Interesting conversation.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're talking about the real estate market in the Greater Toronto Area tonight. Our guest is Simeon Papailias, who is a very knowledgeable real estate investor and broker and student and expert in the real estate business. And he writes quite frequently on LinkedIn and other places. I enjoy listening to him and really follow his guidance and his advice on the real estate market. So, Simeon, thank you for what you've been publicizing, what you've been saying. We've been talking about the condo market, and as I mentioned, Ron Butler was saying it yet hasn't gone into the single family home market. That prices may be flat, and listings up, and time on the market longer, but prices haven't come down. And he didn't know whether prices would come down. And logically, if condo prices are coming down, one would think it would have an impact on single family homes. But I guess because of the lack of supply increases, it hasn't. What's your sense? Is it just the condo market or is it wider?
No, it's not wider. The resale single family home market is nowhere near the fortune or what's happening in the condo market. What's happening there, Brian, there's a few reasons why we have a supply crisis to begin with. The boomer generation, and I can speak directly in my family, my father-in-law, my neighbor to my right, and my neighbor to the left. I live in Mississauga myself. I'm just in East Credit, right by Streetsville, in a beautiful neighborhood. But I can tell you that the 5,000 square foot home to my one side, the 4,000 square foot to the other, there's 2 people living in each home. The boomers, not only are they not moving, these people have no mortgage. These people have no obligation to anyone. They worked hard their entire lives. They have a beautiful home. Common sense would say, get yourself a condo or a smaller townhome. Your kids have gone out. Everybody has moved on, except that you are not willing to give up the comforts and the absolute life that you worked hard for to make concessions to let another family live in your home. I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm not sure that me or I would do that either. I want my comfort. I paid for it. I earned it. I worked my whole life for it. But the problem is, this isn't a condo. There's not 300 residents on top of Jason Smith's home next to me. We have lots that are 45 by 100, 50 by 200, ravine lots, etc. These are all single family homes with 2 people living in them. The kids all have their own homes. So one family, which typically would be coexisting and or whatever in any other country in the world, you have North America that has this different standard and way of life. This isn't a blame game. This isn't anything. This is reality. My neighbor will not move because he told me so. We were talking, we were chatting like neighbors. And he said, have you thought of, making a move, making it a bit easier? Your partner has some health issues. What are you thinking? In a box, bud. Never. And that is a sentiment shared by my own father-in-law. Never will he live his beautiful highway. Exactly. So this isn't a blame or being selfish. This is life. This is real life every day. But how can you accommodate this type of way of living across 8 million people? And the answer is you cannot. So the single family sector, if I were to put my home up right now at a price that's fair, it's going to be sold within 14 days, guaranteed, even with interest rates where they are. Because people know as a fact that a house on this street or on that street or whatever street, within that school district, this is the end user market. And there's way too many end users waiting for their chance to pick up a home where they want to live, where it's close to their work, where it's within a school district, where within it's what have you. So the GTA specifically has always been sheltered by this demand bubble, always has been. The markets do what they do, but the GTA single family home market, for some reason, people are like, oh, it's like magic. No, it's not. There's simply not enough homes in this region. So Mississauga has skyrocketed in values. Markham, Richmond Hill, Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton. If you were to look at Hamilton's history, the last 15 years, you're looking at 4 times. 15 years, a price today, which is, let's call it $800,000, for example. They used to be $150,000 in 2005.
So what's this? Go on.
So the GTA, the engine, which is the GTA, has pushed every community further. And what I said about, you know, people leaving Toronto, the people leaving Toronto are not the people making $500,000. People living in Toronto are your regular blue collar, your junior white collar. These are people who work. This is the engine. You're losing workers because they cannot make ends meet. I speak to these people daily.
You see, I don't think I think it's even wider than that. I sat down with numerous young adults in their 30s who, you know, collectively the couple are making really good money.
Yeah, but how do you save $400,000 for a down payment, Brian?
Exactly. That's the problem. 6 figures each. And they're thinking about, oh, I got to move to Georgetown or Cambridge or Niagara.
So, but again, if you look at Georgetown right now, if you look at Cambridge right now, I was in Guelph earlier today. For example, let me, and this is the issue. So unless you have generational support, meaning we're seeing the biggest, there was a report a couple of weeks ago, CIBC noted that 20% of all mortgages or 30% of all mortgages, don't quote me on this, please, had help, were gifted down payments from family, meaning that Simeon, the father, is not waiting to give Sophia and Gabriel upon my passing. They're not getting inheritance. They're getting live inheritance. So I'm going to take equity out of my home to help my kids now or else they have no shot. If I don't have that money, Sophia and Gabriel and their respective partners will have to move somewhere else, or else they're not going to be homeowners here.
So that's what we're seeing. The bank of mom and dad.
You got it, Brian. You got it.
So what's the solution here? You know, we have this housing crisis. Is it that everyone's going to move into these cheap 500 square foot, 400 square foot condos, or are they going to move to Alberta? Or are we going to have to build the 413 and pave over Caledon?
I think there's going to be a combination of all of the above. I genuinely do. I don't think there's an actual solution in any one thing. My investment thesis, my guidance thesis, and I'm speaking to quite a few people that were involved in the task force, the housing task force, including Tim Hudak, who's the president of the Ontario Real Estate Association, a few of the provincial housing ministers, and my take from being on the ground and being connected to developers, understanding their issues right now, is threefold. We have to solve for the developer, for them to take the chance and build homes. That's who makes the $300 million investment. We need the broker community to be able to bring the investors back. So let's say I am your investment-focused realtor, Brian. I represent you. I need to be able to call you with confidence and say, Brian, I have an opportunity. I want you to invest here. If I misguide you, I will never hear from you again, and you will spread that like wildfire. So I, as a person, as a professional, need to have opportunities that I can guide my clients into, which right now they don't exist. I cannot. You asked me earlier, is this the time to buy? And I said, no, it might be for you, but 9 out of 10, no, it's not. Because you need the specific set of circumstances. So we need to solve for the developer. We need to solve for the retail investor. Unless Brian and all the other Brians are confident in putting their money in new housing, how could they possibly make that move? If you're not buying, the developer is not building. And lastly, the end user. The end user is the top of the food chain. That's who's going to pay top dollar to live where they live when the home is actually built and real. The investor has to believe in a dream, and the builder has to buy land, service the land, develop the land to make it all happen. So how do we solve for these three issues? This is the key. In my recommendations, because I'm not a career politician and I'm not an engineer, nor am I economic development, but I do have the common sense and 20 years in this business to know what needs to happen. The government, very simply put, needs to incentivize the builders by, instead of increasing development charges twice a year, they just did it again in June, quietly. Not a peep was made anywhere. They need to either reduce or put them aside completely for the next 2, 5, 10 years till they hit the goals that they need to hit. We need to see tax abatements like we have seen in the States, where you have entire small cities in decrepit cities go with tax abatements and incentives, and they turn them into beautiful areas in less than 10 years. So the government has to make an environment, create an environment that's friendly to the developer. The developer is not the culprit. The developer is the solution. We need to see pro-development policy. Lastly, they just increased capital gains exemption. They went from 50% to 60%, 66, 2/3, what have you. They need to give an incentive to the investor that if you invest in new housing, keep it on resale to keep the supply as clean as possible. But for new construction, if Brian Crombie wants to invest in new housing, which is what they're looking for to solve a bigger problem, he needs to have a tax exemption. Once that changes title to the end user, goes to the same rules, no problem. But give the Simeons, the Brians, the Johns a reason to invest in new housing. Or else who's going to do it? Why would I ever do it? If there's no reason for me to put my capital at risk, I will not take it. If there is a reason to do so, like gain, you would do it. So that would take care of the investor.
So you think that the change in the capital gains inclusionary rate from 50% to 66%, which takes the taxation on capital gains from 25% to 33%, you think that's enough of a disincentive to discourage investment in real estate?
I think it's just more salt on the wounds. Do I think that's the single factor to cut investment? No, I think 8% interest rates are. But to do that in the middle of the biggest pain train the country has ever seen is so tone deaf. This government is simply so tone deaf.
The U.S. has a tax regime such that if you take your capital gain and invest it in another property of equal or greater value, you can completely defer your tax on gain. Is that a good idea?
They used to exist in Canada too, up until the mid-'80s, I believe, when they took it away. Of course, that would be an absolute miracle to bring back. If you're reinvesting the capital, how can you possibly get hit today? It's insanity. But this is the story of our country.
Land transfer tax, what would you do with that?
I think land transfer tax is fair. I don't like the double land transfer tax in Toronto. That was supposed to be temporary. That was a sham. But land transfer tax, I think the province has to gain as the market moves. And I think it's a great revenue source for government. I'm not anti-government at all.
So your biggest issue is the development fees?
My biggest issue is that they have absolutely maximized and are punishing. So they go on media to speak about a problem that supposedly they're trying to solve. So the rhetoric and the actual execution and actions are completely polar opposites. So they're saying they want to accomplish one thing, but their actions show a completely different other. And this isn't a maybe or maybe I'm wrong. I live it every single day.
Well, and too many politicians, what they said is, oh, development fees are paid by the rich developers.
No, development charges are paid by the end user. So if you were to look at any new condominium, call it a price tag of $600,000 right now, anywhere, Toronto, Mississauga, anywhere, the first $200,000 are not going to the developer. Parkland levies, development charges, Section 37s, every single possible surcharge that you can imagine crawls into the contract. we're not talking about a few dollars. I'm talking like a third of the average condo price.
I understand and agree, but politicians too often say publicly to uneducated people, oh no, it's the rich developers that are paying that.
So, well, and again, I don't want to call people liars. I don't believe in the nonsense of going down that path. But sometimes I know as a fact that the politicians themselves are completely clueless to the development process. They literally get a one-pager from an assistant who has no knowledge of anything. If you were to make an intelligent conversation on housing, people would be literally on the street screaming if they knew what the true charges are behind the scenes and how affordability got to where it is.
Well, you know what? Premier Ford put right on every gas tank at every gas station, cut a description of all the taxes that we pay. Maybe we need to do that on every house. We're going to take a break for some messages and be back with Simeon Papailias in just 2 minutes. And we're going to talk about some of these other markets that he was mentioning in his post, rural, suburban markets. Stay with us, everyone. We're talking the real estate business in the Greater Toronto Area. Back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Simeon Papailias. He's a real estate expert. He's an investor, real estate investor advisor. He's a very smart guy. He posts on a fairly frequent basis, and he's great to follow because his thoughts and his comments and his analysis are all very helpful. Simeon, you mentioned in this post that you did a week ago that people are going to be moving out of the Toronto, Vancouver markets, which is a negative for those markets, but they're going to be moving into suburban or rural markets. And so therefore, do you think that that's a good market to think about investing in? I was in a sort of a secondary market this past weekend of smaller size, and they said there were 400 units, 400 homes being listed for sale, the largest inventory that they've ever had. And so that therefore it was a great buying opportunity in that secondary market. Is that a buying opportunity, or what do you think about secondary markets?
Secondary and tertiary markets is something that I follow religiously because that's what I do. I service people who seek opportunity. So we look at employment deals. We look at employment data viciously. We look at what companies are investing in Canada, specifically in Ontario or other provinces that we're following. Right now, there's tremendous amount of growth. Specifically, obviously, everybody's hearing about Calgary. There's a reason for it. Calgary is experiencing the biggest boom in their recorded history, and oil isn't even the only driver. It's a general consensus. The Calgary mayor has been at it for some time, working really hard at diversifying that city's reputation as to what it stands for. And although they still are looking at, I don't know, something like 50% vacancy in their office towers, jobs are there by the megaton. So you do have cross-provincial migration happening as we speak. There's a few articles talking about the outskirts of Edmonton, cities like Red Deer, Alberta, whereas it's actually where I first immigrated to when we came to Canada in '95, which is central Alberta, exploding at the seams. Same with small towns like Lacombe, Stettler, Blackfalds, Innisfail, that whole central Alberta base, which is right between Calgary and Edmonton. It's kind of the hub into the oil country. So lots of industrial labor, etc. Those communities are exploding. They're seeing, again, not huge appreciation in real estate, but they're seeing a lot of movement, and a lot of families are making it their homestead. That brings future growth, that brings stability and long-term, let's call it prosperity in any one area. When we talk about St. Thomas, Ontario, down by London, with all these EV plans, with all these expansions, Toyota is doing another EV massive expansion, adding, I believe, a full shift into just north of London. What is the town called? It escapes me. Between Brantford and, excuse me, it escapes me right now, but where the Toyota plant is. And they're adding a full shift. That presents tremendous opportunity because housing is going to be in big demand in a quick amount of time with no plans of any change. Because once those investments are made, those are 20, 30, 40-year investments by the people who make them. So those are things that you can count on. Those are indicators and markers that you can, that where it gives me the ability to call Brian and say, hey, Brian, there's a brand new development happening within a kilometer of the new plant. Every executive is going to be looking for that building.
People keep telling me about Hamilton, and that people in Hamilton are commuting to Mississauga or to downtown Toronto on the go for employment, and they're moving to Hamilton because it's significantly cheaper than Toronto.
It is, and the infrastructure, the GO Train infrastructure, has made that possible. So there is something to be said that is actually truthfully happening, but Hamilton in itself has seen massive growth in both the employment sectors. There's field deals happening every day. Slate Development's invested over $1 billion in buying out industrial and commercial complexes to redevelop and bring further value to. That's huge dollars, billions of dollars. So Hamilton is a very bright city to invest in. Again, the times, unfortunately, are so volatile where you need absolute professional advice and absolute, very stringent due diligence to make your next move.
And I get a Facebook post probably every day on either the Niagara region or Prince Edward County.
Recreational markets are tough, my man, and unpredictable. And that's specifically due to policy. I have clients calling all the time. You know, I've heard about the amazing cash flow of Airbnb and all these things, and it's exciting. It sounds like fun because you can, you know, have a cottage, use it 2 weeks out of the year that you're going to use it and make all this money on the other side of it. To anybody thinking of recreational short-term rentals as an investment, I would, again, I would never not recommend it, but I would say please pay heed and ask around, because that's a business far more than it is an investment. It requires work, it requires engagement. And if you have a full-time job and you get a call that your place was trashed last night, there is heck to pay. And those bills can be $200 for a cleaner to go in, or they can be $4,000 for a hot tub to be replaced. So each kind of asset class and different markets have their own nuances. Never ever believe the hype. If you believe in too much hype, it's exactly that. There is no such thing as easy money in real estate or in stocks or in anything. Money is hard to earn.
What about cottage country, Muskoka and the Halliburton? Has it kept its value?
Values have come down across the board, and there's much longer sales periods. Have they been dissipated? I'm not going to say they've been hurt, but if you bought in the last couple of years, you're probably down a cool 15% overall.
15%.
Unlike here, where we're down 1% year over year.
So where should one invest? Calgary?
No, you invest where the returns are best. That is one of the sayings that we coined over the last couple of decades. There is incredible investments in Calgary, and there's complete dogs in Calgary. And unless you know how to underwrite the deal, you're in a minefield. The GTA right now has boatloads of opportunity, but you need the right guidance. And of course, you have to be able to understand how risk affects you personally. Once you sign that contract as an investor, not your lawyer, not your realtor, not your accountant, nobody's going to be there inside your house every 30 days when those payments come out. It's you versus you. And I don't, by any means, look to scare or fearmonger. It's exactly contrary to what I'm trying to do. This is how I make my living. I love to see people invest, and there's incredible opportunities out there. But this specific environment takes a tremendous amount of experience to navigate, and the questions to ask, and how to run the numbers. And we have a truckload of resources. Don't need to hire me. I can't help everyone in the world. But if you're anybody from your audience is looking for resources as to how to run the numbers, how to go about navigating this type of market, what questions they should be asking, happy to provide anything for you.
How do they contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and of course, reccanada.com is our company website. By all means, I'm one of the easiest men to find.
We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments with Simeon Papailias in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. We're talking the real estate business, and we want to know what's going to happen. Is it going to be a good business going forward, or a really tough one? Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're talking the real estate business in the Greater Toronto Area tonight with Simeon Papailias, who really is an expert and someone that I read on a fairly frequent basis to stay up on what's going on in the real estate business. So I recommend him to you. Simeon, we've got a couple of very almost countervailing pressures right now. So you've described that we've got this 20,000 condominium units that are for sale, and only 5,000 have been sold recently. That we've got big inventory. We've got more deliveries coming. We've got I was told 28 months worth of inventory, and it should be like 6 to 8. So maybe a year or 2 years of time period that we've got to run through this current condo inventory.
Yeah.
I think that prices are down. I was told prices are down from like $1,200 a square foot to below $900 a square foot. So that would be like 20 to 30% decline in condo prices, and that the prices are sometimes below what the price, the amount of money due upon completion and occupancy is, where if they bought for $1,200, they put down $200 bucks a square foot, and they got to come forward with $1,000 a square foot on closing, but it's only worth $950, $970, $900. The values just aren't there, and I'm told that there are tons of assignment sales, and assignment sales are up. At the same time, as you've got this price decline and huge inventory in condominiums, you've got a lack of supply of single family homes, the way that you've described it, and people being forced, because of these lack of supply and the high mortgage rates, to move outside of the city, outside of Ontario even. I interviewed Jeff Rubin, former chief economist of CIBC, who said mortgage interest rates aren't coming down as quickly as everyone thinks. The inverted yield curve is such that it suggests that we're going to have a recession or a tough time, and that either the short-term rates have got to come down a lot, or the long-term rates have got to come up, because the yield curve should be not inverted. And he says, I think short-term rates will come up down a bit, but not as much as people think. And so therefore, by definition, long-term rates have got to go up, which is going to be more negative to the real estate
overall
market.
Yeah.
So given all these countervailing forces, what do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm both a homeowner. I have a family of 4. It's myself, my wife, and my 2 kids. I have a real estate practice. I have real estate properties as an investor. So I'm not, blowing smoke or not planning my own future. So I'll give you my personal both experience and thought, and what I'm doing to prepare myself personally. And that's literally clamping down. So to your economist friend's comments, I echo those. This is not a short-term fix. For all the people in my industry, my brothers and sisters in the business, brace yourself, my friends, because volume of transactions is going to remain down, in my opinion, for at least 12 to 18 months more. So all that easy business that we saw in 21 and 22 doesn't exist. So unless you have the fundamentals of hard work, true client best interest, you're simply not going to make it in this market. To the homeowner, what's going to happen? Clamp down. There is no extra spending. Everything you spend today after tax dollars is costing you 6x based on interest rates. You simply stop the renovations, stop the spending. Exactly what inflation, exactly what it was meant to do, it needs to do. People need to respect the fact that there is no easy fix. It is a very complex situation, and we're in it for 12 to 24 months minimum. things are going to get better. So this is a message of optimism, because I know as a fact that because of what has happened, the crisis is going to blow up in exactly 2.5 years from today. So I'm not saying in 2.5 days, oh, this big mushroom is going to pop out of the air, but as homeowners, we will not lose. As investors in real estate, we will not lose. Because history has taught us so. If you look at every 10 years, for the last millennia, things have doubled every 10 years in every major market. And this is not a coincidence. If you go back to 2014 and look what the house index was, to 2004, to 1994, to 1984, to 1974, you are going to see the exact same data, because I've looked at it. And it's available to anyone at Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation.ca, cmhc.ca. So I do believe that no matter what, we will be okay. But to put reason and data behind it, there is no quick fix today. Rates are going to, at best, be in the high fours by next year this time. Sorry, in the high threes, excuse me. I believe somewhere between 3.75 to 4.25 in the next 12 to 18 months, and expect them to hover there for the next 5 years.
Simeon, let me ask you one last question.
Sure.
You say that it's going to be a really tough market and low sales for the next little while.
Yes.
I'm told that the number of real estate brokers ballooned over the pandemic as the market was so attractive. And I'm told that 80% of the real estate sales are done by 20% of the brokers. Does that suggest that there's going to be a lot of unemployed real estate brokers?
Well, I know of tens of, I'm not going to say tens, I know as a fact, thousands have already ran for the hills. Because it's just impossible. Like, if there's no transactions, you can't actually live. These are people who never belonged in the business to begin with. I'm not trying to make fun or to be mean, but you don't go into a business when the sun is shining and the beach is full and thinking that it's an easy business. It's a business of people and customer service. Those people who put all these people who are in trouble, somebody brought them into the market with no guidance. I speak to these people, call me every day to say, hi, can you help me? What happened? This and this. I don't know how much I can help you, but I can at least tell you what to do and try to address it as much as possible. They came in with no guidance. When you're choosing a real estate broker to work with, and this has nothing to do with me, you need to ask specific questions to their experience, and are they suited for your mandate? I'm a commercial broker by trade. If you call me to do your open house, it doesn't work. I won't be there. I have a team that does that. But if you were to say, if you, Brian, said, Simeon, can you sell my house? The answer is no, I can't. It's not what I do for a living. I have 35 agents who are the best at it. But what if you were in Barrie? No, I would put you in touch with somebody who I trust. But residential real estate, investment real estate, commercial real estate, all has thousands of veins inside it. Is it industrial? Is it retail? Is the home, a luxury? Is it mid-market? Is it low market? The people that are going to guide you matter. Your representation matters. No different than seeing the appropriate doctor and looking at reviews. Like, pay attention when you're spending $500,000 or $1 million.
Pay attention. Do your homework. No question. Simeon Papailias, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.
God bless you, Brian. I appreciate you giving me the voice. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. I appreciate you all joining us. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videos are available on my website, briancrombie.com, and they go up on social media and podcast servers as soon as the radio show goes to air. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much, Simeon.